Okay, you all have a good meeting.
Thank you, Pablo.
Bye.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting of the Bronx Community Board 8. My name is Kelly Buford, and I am the chair, the Traffic and Transportation Committee. I am going to highlight a few ground rules. First is, if you're not speaking, can you please ensure that your mic is muted? And we will, Deb or Dan, can you mute?
Looking for the person now.
Thank you. We follow Robert's Rules of Order for the meeting. We follow rules of order loosely, follow Robert's Rules of Order, though I try to stick to it as much as possible, as closely as possible, rather. We have a short but important agenda this evening. And one of the guidelines that we always like to adhere to is that everyone is cordial towards one another and that we give each other the opportunity to speak. With that in mind, please wait for me, the chairperson, to acknowledge you before you speak. Once I acknowledge you, with the exception of the presenters, you will have approximately 2 minutes to provide your remarks or your questions. Once that is done, we will then ask for a rebuttal comment if that is necessary. If it is not necessary, then we will move on to the next presenter. If your question has already been asked, we ask that you defer your turn. And even though you are deferring your turn, it does not mean that your opinion will not be heard. We just ask that you then submit your request directly to the board office so that we can file it in the proper with the minutes of the meeting and send it to the respective individual for filing. For those of you who may not be aware, the email address for the board office is bx08@cb.nyc.gov. I want everyone to have a productive meeting, and I am looking forward to hearing all parties. And we ask that when presenters are speaking, that we allow them to continue their presentation. And once the presentation has concluded, I will open the floor for questions. First, it will be myself. If I have any questions, then I will defer to any elected officials that may be on the call for a particular topic, followed by committee members and then community members. If a particular community member has already submitted a question in advance or a statement in advance, he or she will be called upon first, and then those individuals that are in the gallery with their hands raised will follow. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Then I will move forward then with the attendance. And is Ms. Alexander on the call? Sylvia, okay, I see Sylvia. Ms. Sylvia Alexander?
Here.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Kelly Buford is present. Chris Calhoun?
Here I am.
Thank you. Mary Ellen Gibbs?
Present and accounted for.
Thank you. David Gelman?
Present.
Thank you, David. Dan Paternak? Dan Paternak? Dan,
Oh,
unmute yourself.
sorry.
It's
Yep,
okay.
present.
Thank
How
you.
are you? Thank you.
It's okay. Deb Travis.
Present.
Thank you. Chair's report. I do not have my chair's report, a chair's report. I just read remarks and that can stand as my chair's report. Although I will say that the next meeting is December 15th and we look forward to seeing everyone at that meeting as well. And an agenda will be provided to the community accordingly. Okay, with that being said, we can move forward with the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the committee meeting minutes of the October 20th, 2022 minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Does anyone object to the acceptance of the minutes as presented? Okay. Hearing no objections, the minutes stand approved. Moving on then to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the future of 242nd Street and Manhattan College Parkway. Is Mr. Wacker in attendance?
Yes,
Mr. Wacker, this was your item that you asked to be placed on the agenda. Can you please give us a brief overview of your concerns, please?
well, thank you for adding it to the agenda. West 242nd Street is a dead-end street off of Manhattan College Parkway, next to Bruss Park on the map. It's a single lane and about 80 feet long and rough. It's between the park and a building. We are asking that it be a pedestrian walkway, as former Bronx Traffic Commissioner Navarro Lopez suggested when he toured the site. And construction permits were about to be issued for the new building there. He is now New York State's Deputy Secretary of Transportation. It has never been a street. Creating one now would be a traffic disaster. Essentially a one-lane dead-end street. Mr. Lopez later told us he gave instructions to his successor about the pedestrian walkway. Each of the dozens, perhaps hundreds of vehicles a day would have to stop on Manhattan College Parkway, wait to turn into the new 242nd Street, cross the sidewalk, pass Bruss Park with kids running around in it, then stop, wait, drop off or pick up people or whatever, and then make a U-turn, come back the same way. Cross the sidewalk again, and then wait to enter a somewhat blind, busy intersection. There's a three-way traffic light about 40 feet away. Cars waiting for the light or rushing to get through it will make exiting and entering the new street difficult. Further backing up traffic on Manhattan College Parkway and also on Waldo Avenue. Another reduction to the beauty of the area and a terrible traffic jam. A pedestrian walkway would be a beautiful thing, allowing more green space to absorb rain and clean the air. Shrubs and trees making oxygen instead of heat in the summer. It would be very conducive to a preschool or whatever community center comes to the new building. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is Abigail Martin on the call?
I'm here. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay.
My camera's not working on my computer, so I apologize. I'm the president of the board at 3875 Waldo Avenue, which is the building directly south of Bruss Park and directly south of the 242nd Paper Street. We have a statement. Is it okay if we read that statement?
Yes, please read your statement.
Okay, give me 1 second. The co-op board of 3875 Waldo Avenue, 3875 Owners Corporation, or known as the cooperative, hereby submits a statement in regard to the unopened portion of West 242nd Street between Greystone Avenue and Manhattan College Parkway, south of Bruss Park, known as the street. The cooperative's property was developed in 1931 and currently provides 106 housing units ranging from studios to 3-bedroom apartments. The building converted to a cooperative in 1984. Many families living in the cooperative have resided in the building for generations, choosing to purchase units upon conversion. 3875 Waldo Avenue remains a highly coveted residential property given its proximity to public transit and to Bruss Park. The cooperative relies on the street for maintenance and emergency access to the interior courtyards of our building. For over 50 years, the corporation has maintained a garden and temporary parking space immediately to the north of and adjacent to the cooperative's building. Accordingly, the cooperative has vested rights in the use and ownership of a portion of the street. The cooperative does not support any changes to the street that would affect its historic use of the street, nor does the cooperative support any improvements to the street that would facilitate regular vehicular traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb Travis, you have your hand up.
It really just a point of information. I don't know what street they're talking about, or like what street was intended to be built, or if it is being built. So I would just like to have a little bit more context about what's being discussed.
Sure. Dan, do you want to fill?
Sure,
the
I'll
rest
try
of
to get a
the-
Google map. Yeah, I'll try to get a Google Maps, that way everyone can see it, but it's Manhattan College Parkway. If those, if you can picture the entrance to Manhattan College, the main entrance on Manhattan College Parkway. Right across the street from that, you'll see the building 3875 Waldo.
Yep.
And if you go immediately to, and there's a little path next to it, and then there's Brusk Park. And
Right.
if you look straight back on that little street, there is the new development at 3893 Waldo.
Yep.
So the path is,
Is that little walkway that's along the
You
side
got
of it on the south side of Brusk Park? And so is
You
somebody
got it.
proposing to make that a road? Or is it just they would like it to be a
It-
pathway?
it's an
No.
excellent question.
No,
Well, go ahead, Jim.
We would like it to be a walkway,
Okay.
not a road.
Is somebody proposing to make it a roadway or?
Not that we know of. We haven't
Okay.
heard anything. We just want to be sure.
Got it. Is it, do we know if it's parkland?
No, it's. a
It is
street.
not.
Technically, it's city street.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
No, it's never been a city street.
Right, it's a paper street.
Right.
Mhm.
Got it. Thank you.
That's how they managed to build that big building with that.
Thank you. David? Gil?
Yeah, frankly, I'm still confused because I've been by there. Now, I think,
Hey,
yeah.
David, does that
What
help?
is the driveway and what is the walkway?
Hey, David, can you see the share screen? I'm just,
Yeah, yes, I can now. And that
Excellent.
looks like the driveway to the what was a house and now is an apartment building being built. Correct?
it isn't, so David, the answer to your question is, I believe that when the house was there, they did use, I think they did use it as a driveway, and perhaps Jim can explain. He lives right next door. He knows better than I do. But I can tell you technically, that is a city street. It's the extension of West 242nd Street. It is the unbuilt portion of West 242nd Street.
But it is that exact stretch of pavement.
Yes, it is.
Okay, because there is a walkway immediately to the north by a couple of feet away, which is in Brush Park, correct?
Several feet away. It's 100 feet away or so. It's not-
Okay.
Yes.
And Abigail, your 3875 is that building, that brick building immediately to the south that we're looking at now?
Correct.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. All right, but we don't know of any actual plans to pave it, to do anything different other than use it as a driveway.
Yeah, the problem for us, so I'm Melanie, I'm Jim's wife, for some of us with children and so on, is before there were a handful of cars pulling in and out, the potential that there'll be, depending on what it's going to be, that there'll be dozens of hundreds or
Mhm.
whatever going in and out there,
Yeah.
which increases the danger in this already kind of dicey intersection.
So Kelly, if I might, there's one more piece of information which comes from the past, and that is when the developer was doing this property, we did ask for a copy of his builder's pavement plan to explain what, if any, use or access that they would be requesting from this side of the property. I think that would be a good request of DOT and DOB to see if that builder's pavement plan has been presented to either one of the agencies, and then we would be able to see if the new owners were intending to use it for anything but a pedestrian path.
Thank you, Dan. Great recommendation. Fred Klein? From
Yeah, so
Assemblyman Dinowitz's office?
Yeah, point of clarification, and maybe this is more to Abigail. My recollection when the development, when Mr. Torkin and the developers were first coming up with their plan, there was some negotiation with the predecessor who heard the co-op board of 3875 about securing an easement. I'm wondering, is there an agreement there? And is it possible to coordinate that agreement with what Mr. Wacker's asking for with a pedestrian plaza in lieu of a driveway?
Hi, yes, currently there's no agreement with, with respect to the easement. Chris Steffens is the owner's rep and communicates with the developer and can give you a little bit more detail. We have a licensing agreement about protections for both our properties, but nothing with respect to the easement and access.
Thank you, Abigail.
Is there anything under negotiation at this point?
No,
Okay, thank you.
Board
and
member.
I just want to use this minute to reiterate that we have been using this land in this way, or this street, this area here, for over 50 years. And it is the position of the co-op that we have vested rights to this specific portion of the street.
Thank you. Board member Mertler, who's also the chair of the land use committee.
This is not the first time this issue's come up. About a year or two ago, there was a huge flurry concerning the construction on the back. And the question as to whether this land was appropriately designed for use as a street or whatever. There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever, based on hours and hours of testimony and documents, that this was a private walkway for the building, that if it was shut down, the building probably couldn't operate effectively, that the people in the park would be endangered. And in fact, if you look up at the top of the thing, you'll see that endangered roadway up there, which has every possibility of falling down someday because of DOT neglect over a period of decades. I'm amazed that it's come again. It's been before parks. It's been before a variety of agencies. It has absolutely no business being a public roadway, and it stinks as an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb, you had your hand raised earlier. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my main question is what remedy, or what are the folks, Abigail and I'm sorry, I forgot the other person's
Mr.
name.
Wacker.
Mr. Wacker, what are you seeking from the committee?
I'm just going to jump in here real quick. Apologize for the background noise. I think it would be helpful to know if there have been any plans submitted with regards to this paper street. We would seek the committee's help in that regard. And I'm not speaking for Mr. Wacker. He can chime in if he has something else.
Thank you. No, we were just asking for support for what seems like an obvious thing, that this should be a walkway. There's been no plans to make it a street, but as you know, once you put the pavement down, it's pretty hard to back it up. So there is pavement there, which would have to be torn up, but the pavement is kind of falling apart, and it would be a lot easier to take it out now than after you've already made a road out of it.
Yeah, basically for assurance, we're asking, as Mr. Nevado saw when he's visited the site himself, was that there won't be any major traffic nightmares, suddenly dozens or more cars pulling in and out there all the time.
Regarding the easement was an entrance to the back of the house. It really doesn't have much to do with the driveway.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, in that case, I would say that Dan's consideration to get the builder's paving plan is probably the best next step. I would support that, because then we can understand what their intentions are, and then if there's actual space for a nice walkway up the side of Russ Park.
Agreed. Thank you. Agreed. David Gelman. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Frankly, I don't recall the building's design plans, whether there is an upper and or a lower entrance to the building in any paving plan that we asked for. It would be helpful to get that kind of information too.
There is an upper entrance. There's a whole driveway in it.
I know, but I want to know if there's a lower one as well.
Yes,
So that should, whatever plans
the
we
building,
get
yes.
from the developer, that information would be useful.
Okay, thank you, David. So, we will then prepare a resolution notice requesting from DOT and both DOT and DOB copies of the builder's paving plan to be submitted to the Community Board, Traffic and Transportation Committee.
Do we
Is that-
need a resolution?
We do not. We can just request it.
Yeah, I think the office can ask for it. Dan, don't you think that's sufficient?
Dan, you may be muted.
I think either one will work, but whichever the chair will go, you know, if the chair wants a resolution, I'll certainly second and support one. But we could try with a request to DOT.
We can start with the request and then revisit it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And revisit it if DOT is non-responsive, okay?
Is it DOT or is it DOB
It's
for
both.
the pavers
would-
plan? I thought it was Department of Buildings.
Yeah, I would think so too.
There's,
So it's interesting, but it's a little of both. BPP
Okay.
does go to the buildings department, but I believe that depending on the type of entrance that it is, and you know, Commissioner Calvin's on the line, I believe DOT does get a copy of it sent to them. So for me, it's just kind of belt and suspenders, but I believe Commissioner Calvin, when he's on the line, can probably correct me.
Commissioner Cow, do you have any comments on that? Keith Cow?
Yes.
Did
Yes,
you-
everybody. How are
Did
you?
hear the- We're well, thank you. How are you?
So the build this pavement plan is a function of the Department of Buildings. The only time the New York City DOT gets involved is if there's a waiver request from the developer. Otherwise, the build this pavement plan is a self-certified process for new developers, for new development. So you should start with the Department of Buildings request for a copy of the build this pavement plan.
So I'm just looking here online, Department of Buildings, and it looks like the builder's paving plan has been filed. So I think we can download that and take a look at it.
Thanks, Deb.
Yep.
Mr. Dorfman, you have your hand raised. You're muted, sir. You're muted, sir. Mr. Dorfman, you're muted.
Oh, yes, Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I
no
just
worries.
as a, first, if it would be good if the screen was clear to see the people, but I'm an architect and I just wanted to let you know that you can look on the Department of Buildings website and see a form called the ZD1, which is a zoning declaration one, and it's kind of a mini plan of the site. And that should be accessible immediately under virtual documents. And you should, most large sites, practically all new buildings have this, and you should be able to see the intent of what that driveway or walkway or map city street is. It's easily accessible, and you should be able to look it up right now if somebody just goes into the virtual folder. That's all. I'm here for the next item. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your input. Okay. So we will, as a committee, look at the documents that were just referenced, and Deb, I believe you were pulled them up, and then we can review them and revisit the item, the matter next meeting. Is that okay with the committee?
Yep.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you. And Mr. Wacker and Ms. Martin, Abigail Martin, is that fine with you?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just one question about the building plan. I'm not an expert in this kind of thing, but the paving plan, does that include if you're planning on paving a New York City street as well? I mean, it is a city, it's mapped as a city street. I would think that the builder wouldn't be allowed to.
You want me to
do
answer
anything.
that or,
Sure, Deb, go ahead.
or I suppose Keith can, or Dan?
Or Dan, I was going to ask Dan.
No,
to
go for it,
Yeah.
Deb. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll try. So essentially when you're building a new building, all homeowners are responsible for the sidewalk in front of them. So the builder's paving plan is really about the sidewalk and the engineering diagram to show like where the tree pits are going to go and where like all that stuff is city infrastructure. It goes where the city wants it, but this is an opportunity to kind of coordinate between where the sidewalk should be, where the curb is, and that the city themselves will come and put in, they'll repave if it's necessary. And do the actual, curb edge, but usually the cement is poured by the builders, but could be done either depending how they coordinate that. But they would not do any paving of the street, and they certainly wouldn't take a paper street and pave it or install it. A capital project is usually involved in order to make a new street. So that would be a substantial investment that the city would have to commit to, and normally they would come back to the committee to ask for something like that. I would assume. I mean, Keith could certainly speak to that. I mean, and Dan too, if you want to hop in and add whatever I forgot.
Well, we have the commissioner here tonight.
Yeah.
Everybody, I'm not an expert on the builder's pavement plan process, but it does require the developer to pave half the roadway plus 5 feet and install sidewalks adjacent to their new development. Because the development usually requires opening of the roadway to connect water, sewer, and electrical in most cases, and other utilities, they are responsible for the roadway.
So as I recall, and this street was a little bit tricky, and Commissioner Cal probably doesn't know, but I remember looking at the maps, part of this is, cordoned off into the private property. Like there's like that little section, and the other is the public street. I believe Commissioner is correct with what he just said there with all of the street openings and such. But the builder's pavement plan should give us the information that we're looking for. And I think that's a really good start. And I'm on the site right now trying to pull up the BPP myself.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we will review this matter next committee meeting, which is December 15th, and get back to the residents, the request.
And before we move on, thank you so much. I would just like to let the commissioner know Commissioner, we have reached out to you, and so to look out for some correspondence from 3875 Wilder, 3875 Owners Corp. About this street specifically. Thank you.
All right, how did you reach out?
Via letter to DOT.
Great, we'll keep an eye out for it.
Thanks. We've sent two, one in July and one last month.
So I do have the plan up. It does seem to indicate a road there. If anybody, if you want me to share, I can show you.
Sure,
Or we can move on. Okay.
Go ahead. If we're able to resolve it, then this evening, then we don't have to come back to it. So please, yes.
So here is Dash Place. Here is Brust Park. Here is the adjacent building, and it seems to indicate that there is a mapped street. This is the ZD1. This is not the pavers plan. So maybe Dan can find that if it's different, but seems to be. I don't see any like a sidewalk the way it's indicated down here. There's a R4 district boundary down the center that might maybe indicate that there's not going to be a street here. But it doesn't look like anything is being built.
Okay. Thank you.
But I'll send this out to the committee
Send it
and
out to the committee, and then we can
take
review
a-
all the documents.
Perfect.
That Dan is looking for, and also we can reach out to DOB for documents in greater detail. Okay? Does
Great.
that work for the committee?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the New York City DOT presentation on proposed car share sites within the district. Again, I am going to ask that everyone please allow the Department of Transportation to complete their presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, I will ask some questions. And hopefully they have addressed, they will address some of the questions that I posed to them in advance during their discussions. But with that, Keith, Commissioner Kalb, I will turn it over to you and your staff.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. As you guys know, I'm Keith Kalb. I'm the interim Bronx Borough Commissioner for the Department of Transportation. Thank you for making time to speak with us tonight. I am joined, excuse me, by Holly Malone and Stevie Fig, who should be on here, who's going to share a presentation with you about the upcoming car share program that we are implementing hopefully this year throughout the city. If you could get, I think we shared the presentation before with you guys, or is Stevie going to take control and offer?
I have it. I can, if it's okay, I can share my screen.
So Stevie's going to run through the presentation, and then the two companies that are looking to put some car share spots, we'll give a little bit of a presentation to show why they chose the locations they would like to put some car shares. So Stevie, if you would take it away.
Yes, if I can actually just be allowed to share. Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. Great. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Keith. And just to reintroduce myself, I'm Stevie Feig with the Department of Transportation. So I'm here to talk about our car share permanent program. I'm just going to go through a little bit of background on car share, some statistics from our pilot program, and I'm going to introduce our car share partners. We have Eric Rago and Adrian Moretz from Get Around and Troy Fishman from Zipcar. Okay. And just a little background on car share. So car share provides on-demand short-term access to a shared fleet vehicles. It's typically through a membership. You can rent these cars by the hour or for the whole day. So DOT ran a car share parking pilot program for 2 years that started in June of 2018. Zipcar and Enterprise were our partners in this pilot. The pilot comprised of 230 on-street spaces and 55 municipal parking facility spaces. Within Bronx, we had 20 on-street spaces and 10 spaces in municipal parking facilities. Through the 2-year pilot, we averaged 24 trips per space per month, serving an average of 17 different households per available vehicle per month. The pilot also saw greenhouse gas emissions and vehicles mile travel decline 7% and 6% respectively. Throughout the pilot, we partnered with University of California at Berkeley. They produced 3 detailed customer surveys for us, one before the pilot, one during, and one after. And through their research, they have found that for every 1 car share vehicle on the road, 4 personal vehicles were either not purchased or sold. And for your community board, we have 4 requested sites. Each site is 2 parking spaces. They will be located on the same block face at the corner with the regulatory signage, like the picture on the left. And
I don't
with
see
that,
No?
I'm sorry, did someone ask a question of me or?
Nope, just background noise.
No, it's
Okay.
fine. Please
Sorry.
continue.
And with that, I will introduce Eric and Adrian from Get Around.
Hi, everyone. Stevie, I think you might have the slide deck highlighted because it looks grayed out on our screen. I'm not sure. Could just be the screen here. But hi, everyone. I'm Adrian with Get Around. We're one of the participating car share companies. I'll just quickly tell you a little bit about our company. We're a round trip car sharing company. So our goal is to provide an affordable service for people who need shared vehicles on occasion. We were founded in 2009, really with the idea of doing something with our personal vehicles that are sitting around 95% of the time. So we wanted to do something about that. Now we're present in almost 1,000 cities across the globe, and we've taken over 6 million trips in that time. I know the map is small, but since we're all over the place, that tiny purple dot at the top of the map is Svalbard, part of Norway. So we're all over. Stevie can go to the next slide. We're quite different than a traditional rental car company, so I'll quickly go over that. Get Around is free to join. We don't have a membership fee. There's no monthly recurring fee, and you can book a trip for as little as an hour. So you're only getting a car when you need it. So think of trips like going to the grocery store, picking up something that's too heavy to carry on the bus, going to doctors, meeting someone, or going to see a friend or family, going to places you can't really reach by transit. So how do you use Get Around? You upload your driver's license to our website or mobile app. It can be approved in just a few minutes, and then you're ready to drive. You don't have to wait for a membership card to come to you in the mail. We install a technology into all of our cars. It's called Get Around Connect, and that allows you to lock and unlock the vehicle completely remotely. So everything is contactless. You don't meet up with anyone to exchange keys. You don't wait in line at a rental car counter. There's no kind of coordination. Everything is remotely. But all of our trips, of course, come with insurance and customer support. Can go to the next slide, Stevie. I'll go over these quite quickly because I know there's a lot on the screen, but really our goals, 3 of our objectives that Get Around are to be an equitable mobility option, to reduce congestion and free up curb space, and to be friendly to the environment. Really, we want to complement other modes of transportation in the city and really be part of the transportation ecosystem, if you will. So first, we see that a large portion of our Get Around users are people of color, people that are low to middle income, and people that rent their homes, so they don't own their homes. On the second line, we see that people who do have a vehicle, when they get access to car share, they actually sell or donate their vehicle. We've seen about 1 out of 10 people do that. And then if they do have a vehicle, they use it much, much less after they get access to car share. Being friendly to the environment, we see that most of our users share rides. So not only are you sharing the car, you're sharing the ride itself. So we see more than 2 people in the majority of our trips. And actually a majority of our users don't have a car in their household at all. So this is great for people who don't have access or can't afford a vehicle and they need to access it on occasion. And we know in this community district, almost 50% of people don't have a car at home. And finally, we know car share takes personal cars off the street. So every car share vehicle means 9 to 13 personally owned vehicles are no longer on our roadways, which means less congestion, more space at the curb. So what's this mean for you? Go ahead, Stevie. When we're looking at locations in your community district specifically, what we want to do is look first, Stevie, I just noticed there we go. When we're looking at locations, first we look at what DOT has given to us as siting criteria. There's quite rigorous criteria that we needed to meet. We also want to make sure that our locations are co-located, which means near other forms of transportation. So subway stations, city bike, scooters if available. We want to make it as easy as possible to get to a car share vehicle if you need it. We also want to be in areas that are highly visible. We know 30% or more of people find out about car share just by seeing the signs and decals on the vehicle on the street. So being in visible areas is really important to help people understand that car share is even a transportation option for them. So through the DOT program, we have applied, go ahead, Stevie, and have been approved for locations in all 5 boroughs of the city. And in your community district, we're just looking for 1 location. one location, like Stevie mentioned, is 2 vehicle spaces. So 2 vehicle spaces on Cambridge Avenue. Again, really just we're trying to provide the opportunity to car share. We'll have a list of all of the locations at the end of the presentation. Go ahead, Stevie. And finally, we've just been coordinating with DOT on how we share the message about car sharing as a transportation option. We want to spread the word about car sharing. So we're offering different discounts to everyone in the community. First is a first-time discount. You want to check out Try Car Sharing. You've never used it before. We'll offer a discount for that. We also want to partner with community organizations. So we're looking for recommendations where we could offer bulk discounts. So think about a food pantry, for example, that needs volunteer drivers to deliver food, or Little League that's dropping off equipment. We're really want to be invested in the community. And then we also want to provide assistance for people who live in NYCHA or on public assistance. And so offering a recurring discount, which means it would be available more than one time, a regular discount for those who need it most. Of course, we also want to share materials. We'd love to coordinate with your community district and getting the word out there through social media and traditional outlets as well. And then being involved in the community throughout this, we want to learn and understand how these spaces are being used, and if in the future we might expand or add locations in other places. So with that, my name's Adrian. I can answer questions about Get Around. Stevie can answer questions about the program, and then I'll pass it off to Tori.
Thank you. Stevie, can you move forward with the next presenter in this deck, please?
Of course, I could introduce Tori from Zipcar.
Hi, thank you, Stevie, and thank you, Community Board, for hosting me this evening. I'm Tori. I manage public partnerships and policy for Zipcar here in New York City. I'm looking forward to briefing you on Zipcar's participation in the car share program and answering any questions that you might have. Zipcar is the world's leading car sharing network. We've been in New York City for over 20 years. We have 2,500 vehicles, 60 different makes and models in our fleet at 600 different locations across the 5 boroughs. We have 190,000 members in New York City, with over 16,000 of those members right here in the Bronx. In CB8, over the last 12 months, we see that the average reservation time in a Zipcar is a little over 8.5 hours long, and the average distance is 60 miles. And what that tells us is that people are taking purpose-driven trips. They are taking a Zipcar, they're using car share to go on a road trip, to go out of town, to go visit friends and family, to run important errands, to go to the doctor. And all of that is really a focus, our product of our focus on enabling simple, sustainable, and responsible urban living. 85% of our New York City members do not own a car. 25% of them got rid of their car after joining Zipcar. 35% of them report postponing buying or leasing a car because of their Zipcar membership. And 34% of them say that they would buy a car if Zipcar disappeared tomorrow. So when you look at that 34% number at times 190,000 members in New York City, that's a lot of personally owned vehicles that we're keeping off city streets and hoping that it helps reduce traffic congestion and all the environmental impacts that we see cars have. Moreover, our members tend to live multimodal lifestyles. They tend to walk more, they tend to bike more, they ride public transit more. 70% of our members ride public transit at least 5 times a week. And during the pandemic, we found that 95% of our members maintain their public transit usage despite everything that's going on. Stevie, thank you. So for those of you who have never used Zipcar, it's an easy, convenient, affordable transportation option. You can either download the app or go to our website, book instantly. Cars are available 24 hours a day. You can rent it for an hour. You can rent it for a day. Nationally, we find that our members save upwards of $784 a month compared to car ownership. In New York City, where everything costs much more, we know that number is much higher. Each reservation includes gas, which with gas an all-time high, it's a huge value add. When you take the trip, you come home, there's a parking spot waiting for you. Insurance options, maintenance, roadside assistance in the very unlikely event, all of that is included with your Zipcar trip. So Zipcar, if we go to the next slide, Stevie. Thank you. Zipcar enables people without a car to have all the benefits of owning a car without the cost and hassle of owning one. We're really excited to be working with DOT to help expand the amenity throughout the 5 boroughs and to expand some of our presence here in the community board. We find that people through their Zipcar membership make a positive impact on the environment by using car share. They create fewer emissions, they drive less, they carpool more. And most importantly, in the context of this program, they help create more space in our neighborhoods. Each Zipcar and each car share vehicle broadly takes up to 13 personally owned vehicles off city streets and returns that space to the community for bigger and better uses. Thank you, Stevie. So in this community board, we worked with DOT to identify 3 sites. The logical question is why these sites, why these locations? The short answer is that DOT published a long list of siting criteria that dictate where we can and cannot place vehicles. And we cross-reference those siting criteria with an algorithm that we have that tracks demand, but more importantly, unmet demand. Every time someone goes to book a Zipcar, or more importantly, they can't book a Zipcar because there's none available in their area, or the ones in their neighborhood are taken. Those are data points. And over time, we get, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these data points. And they allow us to create like a heat map of sorts that allows us to see where there is a lot of unmet demand and where that New Yorkers would benefit from expansion of car share. And so in looking at that heat map, we also look to identify locations that allow us to provide easy access, can seamlessly integrate into the neighborhood. And we always have a bias for existing transportation infrastructure, whether it's public transportation, a bus, subway, or maybe bike lanes or pedestrian walkways, or just other things that would allow people to easily access these cars, particularly those of our members who are in car-free or car-light households. But most importantly, in the context of the DOT program, we are looking for locations that allow us to provide access to areas that we are otherwise unable to serve. And so we are looking forward to working with DOT and the community to hopefully place cars at some of these locations and allow many of your neighbors who do not own cars all the benefits of owning one without actually having to own a vehicle. As part of our participation in the DOT program, we have an equity and outreach program that is focused on equitable and affordable access. During our participation in the DOT pilot, we launched a NYCHA program that placed cars at a number of NYCHA locations, including, I believe, at the Marble Hill houses nearby here. And all NYCHA members get free first year and driving credits and severely discounted membership thereafter. And they also get discounted hourly rates on all cars that are parked at NYCHA locations. We work with them to publish dedicated marketing materials in over 4 different languages to make sure that all NYCHA residents are aware of the program and can utilize it accordingly. We also have an ID NYC program where any New Yorker with an ID NYC gets a discounted membership. And as part of this expansion, we're launching a SNAP program, which is providing discounted membership to all qualified SNAP recipients with New York City residency. That's over 1.7 million New Yorkers in over 1 million households. And we find that Zipcar has a disproportionately positive impact on lower income households. 71% of our lower income members say that Zipcar has improved their quality of life. So we're really excited to work with DOT and to work with the communities to expand these benefits accordingly throughout all of these neighborhoods. As part of participating in the DOT program, car share organizations are required to put vehicles in at least 20% of what they've identified as equity sites. We have selected 60% of our sites to be equity sites, and that's just really a tangible commitment to our community to serving every neighborhood throughout New York. We'll also be working on zone-specific programs and local community partnerships. We're really looking forward to working with the community to sponsor open streets, pedestrian plazas, community events. Historically, we've been a sponsor of the Bronx Bike Race, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. But I would urge anybody on this call or anybody in the community or on the community board generally, if you have ideas for ways that we can partner with the community, whether it's on an open street or a community event, or just any event generally, to please reach out to me following this call. We would love to be involved and we would love to help and to find a way to work together. I will also be participating in the DOT Workforce Development Program, a lot of open roles throughout the city, and we would love to work with the community to find New Yorkers to fill those roles. I can say that Zipcar is a great place to work, and I hope that some of your neighbors will join me in that. We also will be doing support and outreach, promote awareness of the program, and that's largely self-explanatory, but to leave no stone unturned, we'll have marketing materials, a dedicated landing website. We'll work with social media and community partners to have flyers, much like we do with NYCHA, to make sure that everyone across the city is aware of the program and is able to utilize it and able to utilize the equity programs that we're offering. Overall here, we're looking to drive awareness and engagement and provide equitable access. If we find something that works, we'll double down on it. If we find something that doesn't, we'll stop. And we look forward to working with the community. And that's all I got. So I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And these are the sites. I'm gonna stop sharing and try and share again. I don't know why my screen is coming out like that. I apologize.
That's fine. Stevie, while you're sharing, I have a couple of questions for DOT.
Of course.
First question is, can DOT please explain the criteria that was used to select these sites?
Yeah, so we took best practices from our pilot program, which was, okay, had to be sited in a permanent parking lane with ASP and or street cleaning. You cannot site within 750 feet from a private garage. We also had a minimum distance of 250 feet from schools, firehouses, police stations, house of worship. It had to be sited on the same block face before or after the intersection, no back in parking. I believe I might be forget. Those are the main siting criteria. I can also send the specific siting criteria to Keith to share with everyone, but those are the main things that we had.
Yes, please do. My next question is, and Councilman Dinowitz, I will get to you after I ask my questions. Thank you. Is the city receiving any remuneration for these spaces?
Yes. So each permit is cost, we are charging the car share companies $475 per permit, and that will be an annual fee.
Okay. And you mentioned alternate side of street parking. So that means these vehicles would be exempt from alternate side of street parking regulations. Is that correct?
The car share companies are responsible for cleaning their own spaces and the 15 feet before and the 15 feet after their sites at the same frequency, if not more than ASP. Because the cars are going to be in frequent use, they are exempt from alternate side parking. But I will also say, to clarify on that, during the pilot, we got bi-weekly maintenance and cleaning reports, and that will continue in the permanent program. So we will be keeping a close eye to make sure that they are cleaning these sites. And if they are not, we will absolutely hear from it, whether it's through N1, through Keith and his office. So we will be making sure, staying on top of that.
Okay, and what is the timeline for rollout?
We'd like to give the community, we'd like to give the community boards 30 days to provide any type of feedback to us, whether it's a safety concern on any of the sites or a suggested site, along with any potential community organizations for us and the car share companies to reach out to. And so after that 30 days, we will then, we'll take feedback into account, review it internally, and then start the rollout process internally with signage installing and also letting Keith's office know which sites are permanently approved so he can let the community board and the community at large know as well. So we don't anticipate anything in your community board going in until perhaps late December, beginning of January.
Okay, and in your list of criteria, I noticed that you did not mention any other construction projects that are going on in the community that would be impacted, that will also impact the loss of parking and things of that nature. How will you plan to handle that?
So we did, that's part of our internal review at DOT. So once we had these sites, we checked against the siting criteria, and then we checked with, I want to say, most, if not all, of our street improvement projects, open restaurants, capital team, bus transit development, to make sure we were not conflicting with any current projects or upcoming projects.
Okay, well, I will say for a current projects, there's a proposed school at the location of 232 and Irwin Avenue. So that would certainly impact parking in the area. So I think that that would be, should be something that you all consider. There's also another major project in the community, which is about 6 blocks away. And that is the visitation site. That is causing much distress in the community already, and true work has not even begun. So I think that DOT should look at that, and that would also impact the 236 and Irwin Avenue location. I will conclude my questions there and ask Councilman Dinowitz if he would like to speak.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Hello, Zipcar and Getaround and DOT. Thank you for the presentation. You know, obviously, we all want to reduce the carbon footprint. And, you know, I think the goals of the company are very good. And it's good to see the DOT recognizing that driving is actually part of our transit ecosystem. So that's very good to see you starting to recognize that. The 475 per permit, is that per spot or per double spot?
It's per site, so that'll include 2 spaces.
So 475 for 2 spaces. And which private parking lots or which parking lots in the area did you go to see if there were alternate sites besides the street parking for these ride sharing programs?
So I will say as part of our process with the car share companies, we asked them to first conduct outreach to private garages. And I will let Getaround and Zipcar answer those specific questions.
Thank you.
Yep. Hi, this is Adrienne at Getaround. I can take that and let my colleague Eric add on anything. So you're correct. We do work with private entities, garages, lots, retail, hotels, apartment complexes, you name it. When we have a log of everyone we've reached out to, so over 160 private locations we've reached out to in this community district, only 2 expressed interest. So Getaround does have 2 off-street locations kind of at the southern part of this community district. But you know, there's a lot of value in the on-street location. So we've done our due diligence in reaching out to the off-street locations. So that's part of our request for the 1 on-street site, which would be 2 parking spots.
So I appreciate the outreach. I'm just not sure what that outreach looks like. I know what it looks like for some city agencies. I don't know what it looks like for Getaround because we, you know, haven't interacted much. I know sometimes the outreach just is an email or a voicemail or a text that wasn't responded to. You know, as you understand, I think you understand, you know, having a car here is tough. I think it's one of the goals of your company. You know, people want to get rid of their cars. That's fine, but some of us need to have our own private vehicle, and that's also okay. And parking's already at a premium, and that's why I ask about some of the private lots. And what I'm offering to you is if you did the outreach, and it was just like an email that was never responded to, I'm happy to help reach out to these private garages. You know, you're putting something on Arlington and 230th. The Century is right there. Things near Johnson Avenue. There's a Key Food there. Of course, you know, Staples, Stop and Shop. Zipcar has spots in Skyview. So you know what I'm saying is if Zipcar has spots at Skyview, now obviously there's some good outreach being done. Before the DOT decides to go forward with taking away street parking for, I think, a program that's really valuable, what additional outreach can be done by Getaround and by Zipcar to really try to make sure our private garages really have the opportunity to house these, to park these cars before we take away street parking? Can additional outreach be done?
Hello, Councilmember Eric Dinowitz. This is Eric Rego with Getaround. We reached out to every single potential parking location in this district. The only ones that expressed interest and that we could work with were at the very, you know, in like Marble Hill area. We got very few of any options in the northern part of the district. And so we, as part of this program, one of the goals is really to make access more equitable instead of having those people, you know, walk or take subway and you know, add 30, 45 minutes an hour to their trip. We're bringing cars and making them more accessible to them. And so in terms of like specific what our outreach was, yes, it was email. It was also calls. And we were pretty aggressive in that until we got to a yes, no. And so I think it was pretty exhaustive. We would welcome, any introductions that you do have throughout the district that might be open to a conversation. We would definitely welcome that as well.
Right, because again, while the goals of the program I think are really important, okay, I think that taking away already limited street parking is really problematic, and we do have what I see as viable alternatives in the form of private garages. So what I'd love to do is work together to really get in contact with them, because it sounds like Get Around. Oh wait, you're both from Get Around. I see. But if only 2 responded, that means in one way or another, the outreach needs to be a little more robust. Not to knock the work
Correction.
you've already done.
Only two expressed interest. Many responded with no, or we're not interested, doesn't work. There's some access issues. Maybe they weren't 24/7. Maybe they didn't want people not in the building into the garage and things like that. So many people did respond, but only 2 were viable options.
All right, I'd love to have a conversation offline. We have a number of community members, very smart, engaged community members. I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to share their thoughts and their questions, but just know that I think it's again, the goals of the company are very good. It is providing an opportunity for people in the community. I just have real reservations about giving up parking when there are, in my mind, viable alternatives, and where this can be a win-win for the community, for the community, for everyone involved.
Council member, this is Tori Fishman from Zipcar. I
Hi,
appreciate
Tori.
your question as well. I know, like you said, we have a lot of questions here, and I don't want to belabor the point. I'll just say for the record that we have a robust locations team that does a lot of outreach. As you mentioned, we do have locations in the community board already. We really value those. This is not instead of those. This is in addition to those. There's a huge demand for car share in this area. And, we would really value the opportunity to work with your office to work on that outreach, and look forward to connecting after this call.
All right, thank you. Community board, DOT, they all got my number, so I look forward to further conversations with you. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. David Gelman.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say up front, I lived here for 20 odd years. I have a car and I have a garage, so I have no need for street parking, so I don't have a dog in this fight. However, I do have a bunch of questions here and concerns. I mean, you talk about your outreach to these garages, but given that you are apparently going to pay $475 a year for 2 spaces, which is essentially $20 per month per car, when the average garage probably charges $100 to $200 a month per car, I wonder if they were not interested in talking with you at all, or not interested in talking with you at under $50 per space per month. But we'll put that aside for now. I'm trying to understand when you say the 4 or 9, which one it is, and whether this is referred to as a permanent plan, but this is a pilot. So I'm a little confused by that. Oh, the 4 or 9, you're showing 4 sites here, but in the thing that was distributed to us earlier, there were 9 sites. And in particular, the one that I happen to know is the 2 really are that are not on this list, but on the list we got this afternoon, were Palisade Avenue by Edsel Avenue, and then Edsel Avenue. And it's not clear to me, and I had mentioned it last month, if you're talking about Edsel Avenue, essentially underneath the Henry Hudson Bridge, that's a very narrow, very short street that I don't think the buses that go to the Spuyten Duyvil train station will be able to get around you there. So I do have a lot of concerns about this. Again, not on a personal level because it won't affect me, but for the community, for my neighbors, I am very concerned. And I really do wonder about this so-called outreach, Because if you were suggesting that you were interested in parking for $20 a month or even $50 a month, I would not be surprised that they weren't interested in talking with you. And then also, Tori, what is the Bronx Bike Race? I'm a very big cyclist. I've never heard of it.
I think that's the borough presence. It's the it just happened.
The Tour de Bronx?
Tour de Bronx. I believe that's it.
Tori, is that what it is?
Yeah,
What'd you
sorry,
say?
I misspoke, yes.
Okay, it's not a race, it's just a tour, but okay. But do you have any answers to, just start with the sites. You're showing
Yes,
4
I-
sites here?
Yes, I can answer that. I can answer all those questions.
Okay.
So DOT ran a pilot program from June of 2018 through June of 2020. That's where all our statistics are coming from. What we're coming to you for is a permanent program. We are now rolling out the permanent program. Originally, we sent over 9 sites. After we rechecked those sites again, it has now been whittled down to these 4 sites. So these 4 sites are the only sites that we are requesting.
Okay.
It's not the 9 sites, it's just these 4. So the 2 that you had concerns about are not on the list.
Okay. I do find it curious because, well, the Manhattan College Parkway, presumably it's accessible to folks who might want to get a car by way of the 1 subway, and maybe sort of 236 and Tibbet. But the others really are in the middle of nowhere. And I'm a little puzzled as to why you're doing those.
The car share companies can answer those very specific questions. They are the ones who chose the sites. So I will turn it over to them.
Yep, I can jump in first. Adrian at Get Around. We have the 1 site on Cambridge. The reason we chose that site is because it's a block away from a bus stop. It is half a mile from the nearest subway station, so 10 to 20-minute walk, depending. So yeah,
You do realize
proximity
it's
to-
quite uphill.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you. But proximity to bus stop was primary reason we chose that location. It also kind of complements the 2 locations we have outside of this program at the lower part of the district. So our goal is to expand access to car share across the district, so that way it's not extremely cost prohibitive or cumbersome to access a shared vehicle.
Tori, do you have?
Hi,
any
this is
response?
this is Tori from Zipcar. Generally speaking, for our 3 sites, we're looking to place these where we are otherwise unable to serve car share customers, sort of what Adrian just mentioned about geographically dispersing locations as well. And 2 out of 3 of these locations are almost directly adjacent to subway stops. The third one is sort of centrally located between a variety of different transportation options. It's not directly adjacent to any public transit, however, but per the data that we had when we were selecting sites, all of these sites have exceptionally high demand for not just the area, but for the borough generally, and will help us pair cars with people who don't own them and who are looking to embrace another transportation option.
David, does that answer your question?
I'm still scratching my head, but yes, those are answers. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Dan Paternak.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. I do have a few questions. Let me just get back to them.
Oh,
As
Dan,
David
before
covered-
you
Sure.
start the questions, just a reminder to everyone, I'm calling on committee members first. And since Dan and David are both committee members, I wanted to get their questions in first. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. So I guess to either company, how many cars, either Zipcar or Get Around, do you have in our community board right now?
Hi, this is Tori from Zipcar. I believe that we have 19 vehicles in the community board, including 5 at NYCHA locations.
Okay, and those are spread out, I'm guessing, in how many different sites?
5 different locations, at least 5.
At least 5, understood. And on each parking spot that you would have as part of this program, or each car, I should say, because you're getting 2 spots in each location, how much a month would you say each car would yield to the company? In profit, gross, net, whichever.
I don't have the data to answer that question.
Would you have a rough range?
I do not.
You do not. Okay, so the data that you did have, and you presented some data to us, how was that data obtained? It sounded like it was from users of the car share programs through surveys. I was wondering how many of the actual users completed that survey by which you obtained the data? Was
Sorry,
it 50%
which
of
data
users?
specifically are you referring to?
Well, you presented a number of data from your users regarding how many people gave up their cars, how many people
Okay.
were,
Yeah,
you know,
so,
saving money and the such. And it sounded like
we
it was
conduct
a survey.
Yeah, we conduct a national survey that it's national and local, just to get ahead of that. If we conduct a national survey that in well excess of 10,000 people, we use those survey results to extrapolate data and trends. We also localize the survey to our major markets, which is of course one of the most major markets, New York City. And we make sure we work with, you know, a robust data science team, along with external consultants to make sure that we have statistically significant sample sizes across all markets, but for New York specifically. So I
So
hope
let's
that
talk
answers
about
your
New York.
questions, but
It doesn't.
okay.
So let's talk about New York and let's talk about specific local. So that way we have an idea of how this is actually going to benefit our community. Can you give us any local data? And does that local data, you know,
All the numbers that I
somehow
quoted were
correlate?
for local, with the
So
exception of
everything
the $786 number. All of the numbers I quoted were for New York specifically.
Okay, good. So let's get to New York specifically. Is that New York State, New York City?
City.
New York City. So in New York City, of the folks that you sampled, it's not going to be 10,000 nationwide. How many folks did you sample in New York City?
I'll have to follow up with the community board on that specific number. I don't want to misquote it.
So I'm very much interested in the local data, how many folks, and, you know, the folks that you actually sampled, you know, how big or small of a part of the whole of actual users were there. So for instance, if you're telling me that 1 in 4 people give up their cars after they start using this process, you know, what's the sample that you're going by? You know, because that's a pretty driving statistic. So I'm very much interested in those numbers. And if you could follow up, that would be wonderful. For me, I guess my next question, perhaps, you know, anyone can answer it, maybe DOT, perhaps, you know, when we're taking away spots from the community, which are greatly coveted here, and they're greatly coveted by people who don't have parking garages, and particularly from people who can't afford to get a parking spot, which the going rate, at least around here in my little community, is about $300 a month. So if you're reducing the supply of the parking in the area, you're essentially increasing the cost of parking because, you know, there's less spots available. So by taking away these spots, aren't you now shifting the cost from your company to the community?
I can try and answer that for you. So
Please.
we are hoping through this program that we help people shift who, and I'm not talking about people who have a car and are using it every single day for working and commuting purposes. We're hoping that people who use a car a couple times a week, perhaps now with this service so close, maybe don't have to own their own vehicle, or maybe because the service is here, they don't have to go out and purchase a vehicle. So we're hoping by providing this service on the street, it'll encourage people who are not using their cars every single day to either not buy one or perhaps sell their car.
So hope is good, but I don't see that we have any data to actually support it. And I'm looking to see the numbers that are there. I mean, the other part of it that we're seeing here and stated beforehand is that the companies are getting free advertising by being on the street. Again, you know, it could benefit to the corporation. My last question / concern, Kelly, and I think it's a point that we need to take up as a committee, is that it was stated by DOT earlier that they're looking for 30 days for us to get comments. In all fairness, we got this presentation tonight and we're just getting the data tonight. I don't necessarily think, I personally don't believe that 30 days is enough for our committee to come back and give comments. And certainly I don't think it's enough for our board to give comments, which our committee would have to go to afterwards. And committee, or Kelly, or Madam Chair, if you can give that some thought, maybe the committee can give some thought also. Thank you.
Can I ask do you have a sufficient time frame in mind that would work for you guys? that I can ask for?
I leave that to
I
Chair
would say-
Buford.
I would say a minimum of 90 days, frankly.
And I also just want to, on your point to personal cars and personal cars being sold or not purchased, the 1 in 4 is from our survey with Berkeley, and I can share that with Keith to share with the board as well. It was a very in-depth survey and evaluation of the pilot with some really great data. And I don't have the specific number of each sample, but everything is in the survey and the evaluation, and it's really great, and I can share
Can
that.
we,
with you
I
guys
would
as
love
well.
to see the survey, and I would love to get the specifics of the actual sample that it comes from and where it
Absolutely.
is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Board Chair Spalter.
Hi, thank you. That was number 1 on my list. 90 days is a minimum of what we need. First of all, we're in the middle of the holiday season. We have to discuss this at future TNT meetings, the feedback we're getting. We have to check out these sites. So absolutely. You know, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're losing spots to charging stations, open restaurants, and now the car share. We are getting letters at the board of concern. We are getting calls. And, you know, I'm seeing now we got 9, but there's 4 here. Can I assume that the 4 will become 9? And can I assume that you're saying it's only 2 spots per, but that will grow? This is like a parking desert. I mean, like David, I must say I have a garage, I have a private house, but I lived many places in Riverdale, and we had to drive around for an hour to find a spot. We couldn't go out because of spots. You know, losing your spot. This is huge in this community, and we certainly need time to evaluate it and get back to you. Right now, the number of spots is how many that you're
So
talking
right
about?
now it's 4 sites, and each site is 2 spaces, so it's a total of 8. It is not, it will not become that 9. It is this 4. And I also want to say that we are going to be getting monthly data for the car share companies to understand usage, how many households, people these cars are serving, average trip length. We're going to be getting very detailed survey data month per month on these companies, and that's going to gauge really expansion in future years and whether these sites stay here, whether they're removed, whether we expand to other areas. So these sites aren't, we're not just putting them there and leaving them there. We're gonna be getting data, we're gonna understand the usage, or if they're not being used, we're gonna understand that as well. And if they're not being used, they will be removed.
Will you be coming back to us
Yes.
with the evaluations, as this program moves on?
Absolutely. And so that is an internal conversation right now in terms of the frequency that we're going to be coming back. But I can't give you that specifics right now, but we certainly will be sharing data with the community boards as we progress and as we get the data. We'd like to get about 6 months of data so we can understand really the usage before we're sharing. But I can assure you that we will be sharing the data with you guys as we move forward.
Thank you. And
as
can we
we
understand that? Can we understand the 90 days? For our
do you
feedback?
understand that? Yes, I absolutely hear that. That's something I have to take back
Okay.
to my superiors as well, but I absolutely hear that, and that's something I will be sharing with my superiors as well.
Thank you. And just to stress, Madam Chair, it's a minimum of 90 days, not
Minimum.
90 days. Thank you.
And perhaps certain shopping centers, we have Key Food, we have Sky, certain shopping centers, you need to give them more of an incentive to take your offer. I mean, evaluate that, because we use our shopping centers, but they might have 10 spots that they could lease to you. So I'm also interested in what the councilman is looking at with you, the other options, to make sure they're being explored. And is it a matter of price? Then maybe you have to pay more. Right now, we taxpayers, we pay to maintain the streets, and we want to be able to park cars there. Anyway, thank you.
Madam Chair, and it's above Madam Chairs, I guess, just for clarification, I know DOT said they were going to take it back, but the truth is, we do have the Bronx Borough Commissioner here now regarding the timing. You know, if they decide after this meeting that it's 30 days, then, you know, we might be out of luck to actually make a statement on this.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioner Cal, do you have any comments?
I think we're going to stick with Stevie's answer. We'll get back to you on whether we're going to do a 90-day review. Dan.
No, that's fine. I mean, then I'm going to make a motion tonight regarding it, you know, just to kind of protect the board, and the committee can do that. But thank you. I do appreciate the answer.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the question. Chair Murdler, Chair of the Land Committee Murdler, followed by Mr. Dorfman.
Let me divide my remarks in two parts. Second part is as Chair of Land Use, I will point out to you that this will do serious, if not permanent, damage to attempts to build affordable housing in this community. But let me go first to the points. One, we are told by the department that it's going to implement it, and as it has done on prior occasions, it goes ahead, and this is just show and tell time. This is the least responsive agency in the city of New York. It goes ahead and does it after snowing the community, and that's just a terrible condemnation of an agency. Second, the agency tells you they are hoping that people will give up cars. I hope for a win on the lottery, but I never succeed. They are telling us about a process that they are going through. It's not a process that goes to a community and says, will you support or will you oppose? And if you oppose, tell me why. It's instead, we're going to give you a chance to talk. Maybe we'll give you 90 days if you beg, but we'll do it anyway. That's their track record. Don't take my word for it. Take their last performance. Now let's go to the specifics. We heard about surveys. Every one of those surveys was done by the applicant, not by an independent entities. Liars can figure and figures can lie. If you have an independent survey, I think you ought to produce it to the board on every occasion. Next, you talk about they're going to clean the streets. For 40 years, I've represented the sanitation union in this town. And every time it runs into problems of getting streets clean, it's because cars are sitting there. These cars are going to be immune from being moved in order to clean the streets. In order to clean our streets in the city of New York, you must have alternate side parking or some vehicle to do it. These cars are going to stop the cleaning of those streets. Next, after 10 years on the MTA, I can tell you that these kind of programs, including the outdoor eating places, have been a major deterrent in getting bus traffic to move rapidly and accident-free. And here you're going to have some more. Next, somebody spoke about taxpayers before. The taxpayers are not the only ones who pay for the streets. The people who sit at the parking meters pay for the streets. They pay for the opportunity to park 15 minutes, half an hour, or the like. On the other hand, all of that income is going to be gone from these spots for $475 for 2 spots. I guarantee you, you'll find 1,000 people in this community who work hard for a living, who work every day and sweat for it, who'll give you $475 for the 2 parking spaces for a whole year. Come on, this is a ripoff. And the question I have at the bottom is who's getting rich from it? I think the only place that ought to look at this is the DA. That takes me to my last point. They have here a clear case of private inurement. These cars are 2 competing rent-a-car places. We have not got Avis in here. There's no indication Avis was ever contacted. We don't have Hertz, we don't have Budget, we don't have the rest of them. This is private inurement and illegal as such. Now let me go from the land use standpoint. If you have an area where you want to build houses, affordable housing, real affordable housing, not the stuff we're building in New York today. Affordable housing that sits in the category of people who make $50,000 a year and less, not $185,000 a year. If we want to have it, we have to have parking for the people who live in those houses or the facility. The fact that you want to have one near a bus stop is no answer. Now you're competing with the buses, and the MTA's got enough trouble being able to make its budget. I can go on and on with these examples, but this is clearly something that is going to be deleterious. It's going to be harmful for the construction of housing for people and for keeping the city as one that is fit for living in people. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Murler. Mr. Dorfman.
Kelly, Rosemary's got her hand up too.
And me too.
Okay,
and Dan
well,
does.
Mr. Dorfman, then David, then Rosemary, then Dan.
Hello, Madam Chair. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Is it possible that I can see all the faces? I'm not in a room with everyone, and I'm seeing this white sheet of paper in front of me. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate this. First, I agree with a lot of what has been said so far by Dan and by David and by Mr. Mergler. I actually created the curb on Arlington Avenue as a house builder and an architect 20 years ago. I live in the house next door to 2785 Arlington Avenue, which I designed and I built. I know the corner intimately. I walk the streets. I walk all 4 of those streets regularly on Saturday, and I walk every morning up these streets to go to my synagogue. I find the streets are much dirtier. I find that what Jeff Dinowitz did years ago was maybe 12 or 15 years ago to remove alternate side parking from 2 days a week to 1 day a week cleaning was okay then. Now it is not. I can tell you just from the last week, I've been looking at the same 2 bottles on the street all week. Nobody picks them up. And they're telling me these Zipcar companies, I'm not against it. I think Zipcar is fine. I know fellow architects that use the cars to go to job sites. It provides a service. It's a private service, and maybe it should be on Riverdale Avenue. Maybe the DOT commissioner, Mr. Kalb, should put them where there are parking spots and let DOT and the city reduce the cost of that parking spot against the $475. I have been authorized by my neighbors. 3 of them have called me in the last 12 hours that I should speak at this meeting for people on this block that live here. This is a 1-family house zone, a 3-by-3 block. There are no buses. There are no people that really need to park on the street, but yet there is not a parking spot ever available on the street when parking is legal, other than when the 2 hours a week that the street cleaner comes by. The people from the Century park on the street. People from other apartment buildings park on the street. Their streets are always crowded. They block the curb cuts. They block people's driveways. People want these spots who live in apartments. They are free to them, but yet I, as a tax dollar, who are heavily taxed to live in my private house, I pay for these streets. I pay for the cleaning. I'm totally against them using Arlington Avenue. Like I said, Mr. Keith Kalb, you're the acting commissioner, and you've told me right now that this is happening, whether you listen to me or not. But I'm a taxpayer, and maybe I should be one of those who will pay with my feet and walk out of New York like the rest of the people here who are smarter than me. But I love this city. I was born here, and I intend to die here, and I love this city. And I don't want you giving my spots away to people, period. I'll pay the $475 a month for those 2 spots on the corner, and I'll use them as I choose. But I don't want you giving my spots where my children, my neighbors walk their dogs, and maybe my neighbors' children, when they come to visit, need a place to park. It's not fair. And when you start playing with fairness, you can take equity and throw it in the street, because without fairness, there's no justice. I'm tired of it. You're not going to ram this down our throat and tell me it's a permanent program. Put it on Riverdale Avenue, put it on Broadway, put it on Johnson Avenue. Take the illegal cafes that people used to pay a lot of money to get a sidewalk cafe permit. I did it for tens of people around the city, and they paid a lot of money. COVID's over. Order the sheds down. My wife can't find parking on Johnson Avenue. She can't find parking on Riverdale Avenue. It's hurting the merchants who pay a lot of money for their rent. And now you want to give the private companies the right to park on my corner. I have cars now, and I've sat 2 weeks ago. I went with Eric Dinowitz to the public safety meeting at Lehman College, and I told Mr. Banks, the deputy mayor in charge of public safety, I walk on my streets, I'm seeing cars on blocks. People are getting their tires ripped off in this neighborhood. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the noise, and I'm tired of everything. And now you want to put something else on top of me as a homeowner and taxpayer. It's enough. It's enough. Move that Arlington Avenue space and any of these others. And by the way, that space is within 75 feet, I would say 750 feet of a private garage. It's within 25 feet of a private garage. That house has a private garage. Between its driveway and the corner where you're showing it on the picture is less than 75 feet long. I don't work for the DOT, but I've drawn builders paving plans with my own hands. And it's time that you listen to the public, especially a person like me. I'm doing this for 37 years, building, drawing, filing with the city, new buildings. This is not a place for it on Arlington Avenue. It certainly is not. Put it on a Riverdale Avenue, a Johnson Avenue, Broadway. Put it somewhere where it's, I have to disagree with you, Charles. Put it somewhere where it's right near a bus stop, if that's their criteria. This is a single family house zone, and it doesn't make sense. Madam Chair, I thank you very much for your patience. I thank everyone for listening to me, and I yield the floor to the next speaker.
And thank you, Mr. Dorfman. David, and then Rosemary.
Yes, an actual question. The bane of the existence of people in these neighborhoods is car alarms that go off in the middle of the night, and the surge in thefts of catalytic converters. What are your companies going to do about this? What's going to happen if an alarm goes off in the middle of the night, or to protect those vehicles from getting ripped off? Anyone from?
Yeah, this is Adrian at Get Around. I can try to take that, and Eric, you can jump in as well. Our hope is that the cars are frequently used. Just in general terms of safety, when someone uses a vehicle, they do have to take photos of the car before and after their trip. Same with the interior, so we can make sure that the cars are well maintained, they're cleaned. If there is an issue, that's brought to our attention immediately. So that's a little bit aside from your question, but just generally want to make sure the cars are in good working condition. If they're not, they're taken offline and replaced with a different vehicle, or we make sure they're in good working condition. I'm not sure we've had issues with the car alarms. I don't know if our technology can remotely handle that. There's a small portion of our vehicles that are hybrid or electric, meaning I understand your concern about the catalytic converters. I've heard that just in my personal life, my friends have had issues with that. So we have not seen that be an issue at our company, but we can certainly take that into consideration if that's a concern of yours.
Yeah, and the ability to address the alarms. I mean, in theory, yeah, Stan was getting to, in theory, the idea of putting these cars on the street will, in theory, eliminate others from parking their cars, but we don't know if that'll actually work. This community was very cooperative during the pandemic to allow restaurants to expand by opening up onto the street, thinking that it was a pilot, that it was going to be for 1 to 3 years, and now it looks like it's going to become permanent. And we're not happy about it for many reasons. And in the same vein, I'm not as uncomfortable with the idea of a pilot here but I am concerned about our chance to review it and then say, nope, it didn't work. It didn't remove cars from the street as much as you thought. So that will be a concern that we will try to address as a committee and I imagine as a board. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Rosemary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief, I promise. Parking is important in CBA. I just stated the obvious. We know this. These spaces are few and they're valued and they're used by all of our neighbors. This proposal is nothing more than an expropriation of public property for profit-making commercial enterprises. That's what this is. And this is where Mr. Dorfman, I'll just go a little bit against what you said. Whether it's Riverdale Avenue or your neighborhood, this is an expropriation of public property for private commercial profit-making business. This is not right. These companies have a business model. I love capitalism. This is great. They have a very good business model. You believe in it. Good. Do it. Do it on private property. Don't take your business model and then come to the public to take public space to enhance and do your business model. Do it on private property. The car rental business started, God only knows how long ago. When the car rental business started, this is just a variation on car rental business. They got garages, they got lots, they got their own property. Do it. Go get property. Go find property and do this on your own, not off the back of the public. Just one last thing, Madam Chair, and I think this is important. Back in 2009, and I think on this call, there are several community board members that were on the board when this occurred. And it's me, Sylvia, Laura, Dan, and Chuck Merdler. Chuck was the chair of the Land Use Committee. Back in 2009, these very same companies came to change the zoning resolution to allow car sharing vehicles in private residential buildings. This was not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. The parking in a residential building must be accessory to the use of the building. But these companies were powerful enough to get the zoning resolution changed to allow them to have spaces in residential buildings. Okay, this is a powerful muscular enterprise. And that's in 2009. It was the very first zoning resolution change that I came across when I was a new member on the community board. This has been in existence for how long? Doesn't seem to be working out. And I don't understand why. I can tell you many buildings have not been contacted in Community Board 8 to bring those cars into residential garages. And my question is it because you want them for free? Are you willing to do the commercial rate? The residential people in these buildings pay $200, $250, whatever it is a month for that space. Are these companies willing to pay that to have those spaces in those buildings? That you're now allowed to do because you got the zoning resolution changed in 2009. That's my problem. My problem is this is a commercial enterprise and it should be done privately in the private market and not use and not expropriate public space to do it. I do have to stop because I'll just be repeating myself. But Madam Chair, I do think that the questions that have been asked by other speakers the answer should come to the community board. And any studies, any claims made in the presentations should be backed up by studies that we see. I know a number of questions have been asked. that information is important, and I hope that it's forthcoming. Madam Chair, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Rosemary. Deb Travis.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I just want to say that just full disclosure, I am an employee of Zipcar. I am a member services manager. And so, but I also, before I was ever an employee of Zipcar, I was a user of Zipcar. I've been a member of Zipcar since 2004. And so I can kind of speak from two different places here. One, as a member, Zipcar allowed me to have access to a car, to go up to Westchester, just to go grocery shopping and do simple things. Because sometimes you just need to go pick up a Christmas tree, or sometimes you need to take your cat to the vet, or sometimes you need to go up to Westchester, right? And a car is really, really convenient. But you don't want to have to find parking for it all the time. You don't want to have to pay insurance, and cars are expensive. I mean, let's just be honest. And so I think the thing that I think is important to think about with a service like Zipcar is that there are people right now who they can't really afford the car they have. They're parking it on the street. It's going to get dented and dinged from cars going by. They've got to pay for insurance. They've got to, pay for the cost of the car itself, upkeep, mechanical inspections, all that stuff. And that if Zipcar works, if there is a car nearby, then it's a huge relief for them because they can sell the car and then they just rent this car, for the afternoon to go drop their kids off or to go, go get the Christmas tree, but they don't need to worry about it all week. And I think a lot of people who own cars, what it's like to have a car that you're not driving every day. For people who drive every day to work, Zipcar is not, here for you. But the thing is that because they take it's the other people who drive their car once a week, once a month, they're very likely to say, you know what, I got an option. I don't need to own this car and deal with the hassle of it. And so they sell it. And then that's how you create space. Zipcar itself was founded in 2002 by two women in Boston who were parking scholars. Like their whole whole thesis was about parking, and Zipcar kind of comes out of that. So that's what I wanted to say. That that kind of core central belief of giving up parking, it's both the studies that the city presented and the Zipcar presented have been out verified external to the company, because I get it and Zipcar gets it. You're going to have actual facts and not made up corporate talking points, but that's a real thing, and it's a big part of the mission of the company. To Chuck's point about Avis and other companies, Avis Budget actually owns Zipcar, so they are part of this mix already, and it was an open process to submit through the RFP. As far as folks who were talking about whether the streets would be clean, the cars themselves get cleaned by cleaners, and when the cleaners come to clean the cars, they clean the streets, and so that's not a problem. The cars don't take up any more space than other cars on the street. And the reason that they're actually kind of helpful in places that are not like, Riverdale Avenue is because they're just kind of convenient to people who live nearby. Especially for us, we up here in the Northwest Bronx are so close to Westchester that there's just a lot of reasons to drive north. If you want to go south, you can take public transportation generally, unless you want to go across town. But if you want to go north, having a car just to go up for the afternoon or go up to Hudson or something for the day, Zipcar is kind of perfect for that. And then this whole issue about public-private, commercialization of private space. I 100%, I think that, we want to be very careful whenever we're letting private companies take over public spaces. I think the irony in this particular case is that right now we're letting private individuals have the space, and that what Zipcar or GetAround or anybody who's participating in the car share is doing is they're saying, we're going to let, I don't know what they said, like 15 people or whatever, how many ever people who are sharing that space, they'll be, a lot of people will be able to use that one car space instead of just the one person who would be able to park there if the one person was parking a car privately. So that, parking, if you're allowed, letting people privately park their car, it's already the privatization of the public area. And so to the degree that we can get the most bang for our buck and have a lot of people use that car, I think that's a very good compromise. And then finally, just on the topic of private garages, because I've been a member a long time, there's Zipcars over on Putnam, there's Zipcars down on 238, right off of Broadway, Marble Hill. there's zip cars in all of the locations where we can find locations. Like, just to Tori's point, that we're always trying to find locations, and we pay for private lots, we pay for, wherever we can get spaces. And so the city is just, having these city spaces is just so important because it allows us to get to neighborhoods where there isn't available parking. Because to Rosemary's point, residential would be great, but Rosemary, we all know those spaces are usually the residents have them and they need them, and they're not going to give them up easily because these parking spaces are so important. So that's all I want to say, is that I think that having these 4 locations is actually really important and good. And I just hope that we kind of, it's a learning process. And so let's just keep our minds open and kind of keep listening and learning about how car share works. Thank you.
And your comments about Zip would apply to get around as well, correct?
Yes, 100% it would. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We will.
And to Avis also, and to Budget Rent-A-Car, but they're competitors.
I'm sorry, Chuck, what'd you say?
I said it would apply to all car rental services, yet these 2 have been selected by an agency which has shown absolutely no care for the public.
It would apply to any car share. Yeah,
I also just want to clarify that this program is open to any eligible car share company, and they applied to the program. DOT did not go out seeking these companies. We did not say only Zipcar and Get Around Car can participate. We actually have 3 companies who are participating, and Zipcar and Get Around are the 2 that have selected sites in this community board. But the program is open to any and all eligible car share companies.
$475 for 2 spots for a year.
Thank you.
I'll take 10 at $575.
Thank you, Stephanie Coggins, followed by Vittorio B.
And are we limiting to 2 minutes?
Yes, we limit to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Unmute. Hi, I have a quick question. You've answered some of my questions. I live on Independence Avenue between Kapok and Bradley Terrace and Palisades Avenue. So I'm relieved that my location or my street is taken off the chart. But I have a question about how. So it's $475 for 2 spaces. One, how was that figure arrived at? And also, I understand that there's a yearly permit for these spaces. Is there a contract for a number of years, for a defined number of years, that these spaces are available to the rideshare companies?
I can answer that. So the permit, it's an annual permit, and we will revisit these sites on an annual basis. Every year, the car share companies will be able to put in for renewals of existing sites and or new sites. Renewals will be based on the data for the previous year. If we see that these cars are not being used, they're not serving a wider range of households or people, those sites will be removed. That permit will be revoked. As far as the permit cost, unfortunately, we are bound by case law to charge administrative fees. So there's a whole mathematical equation that's based off of administrative fees for review of these sites. And that's based off of case law. And that is a larger conversation that the department is having right now, but it also includes changing state legislative law as well. So I understand everyone's concern with the price. It's something that's being talked about at the department. Unfortunately, at the moment, we are bound by this case law to only charge based off of administrative fees.
So essentially, this is an administrative fee. It's essentially just a, you're just charging the least amount of, there's the least amount of cost that can be charged because of this administrative fee.
I wouldn't say the least amount of cost. I understand it's not a lot. However, it's a larger conversation and issue than is just this company. It's kind of permit wide, and it's a whole mathematical equation. And so perhaps Keith knows a little bit more about it than I do, but it is based off case law, off administrative fee. So while it's not the lowest, it's certainly not the highest. It's a much larger conversation that the agency is partaking in.
All right, because when I moved to Spike
Ms.
Dive.
Victoria, I'm gonna have to ask that you please limit your questions because we have several people that are waiting in the queue and they've been waiting for some time. So I will come back to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria B.
Yeah, I just want to say I've been a resident of Central Riverdale for over 10 years. I live near Henry Hudson Parkway, and the closest location for me for Zipcar or the other one, Get Around, would be Cambridge Avenue. So I was really curious to just hear about the presentation tonight, because this area of Central Riverdale has always had parking crunch. We have really very limited street parking. The parking garages around here have waiting lists. And so I was really curious just to hear the presentation tonight. And I am glad to hear that you guys will be monitoring usage of that particular site to see how many people actually use it, just because of the fact that parking is so limited here. I don't really have any questions, but that's really what I wanted to say. I think this is something that has to be closely monitored for all of the reasons that everyone has mentioned here so far, particularly cleanliness. That's something that I'm very concerned about as a longtime resident. And just, you know, if we're going to be giving up those 2 parking spaces, then they need to be used, and we need to get the maximum benefit out of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Renels, followed by Rena Bonio.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. I used to own a car, and even at that, I shared the cost of that car, and the costs were just too high for the utility. And I have found Zipcar very useful to get around in the Bronx. And I echo a lot of what Deborah Travis said around, you know, the utility of going north, the utility of going east and west. And, you know, the streets are a public resource. And while I'll admit these are capitalistic ventures and the corporations do end up profiting off it, I actually think, just like our public buses are running on these streets and everybody pays for the streets, there's some fair use for folks to be able to use a shared resource that the city is not able to provide at this moment. So I'm definitely in support of this, and on a couple, in a couple ways, I am thankful that DOT put this out and has this program. And we really need to look at limiting our use of cars in general. And I think this is a great forward-thinking first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bonio?
So full disclosure, I live on Arlington Avenue, and I'm very familiar with how difficult it is to park here. In general, I'm not opposed to the concept of car shares. I'm sure that my kids will be doing that at some point later. But I find it quite interesting when the presentations were talking about visibility and putting the Zipcars and ride shares where near rental homes and rental this and equity and equitable things. And I don't see where the locations that were chosen don't make any sense. They don't fit into that category, specifically the Arlington Avenue single family homes. Doesn't make any sense. Put it in front of the Century or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody Colon. And again, I'm asking everyone to please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for the presentations, and I really appreciated the thoughtful questions from the other community board members. I heard a lot of hopes and wishes and very little actual data. So I do want to, as Friends of Spuyten Duyvil, we're a network of community residents and co-op boards and other organizations, to just request Commissioner Cal that you do give Community Board 8 at least 90 days to consider this, do some outreach to the people who are in the neighborhoods where these spots would be. And I would love to see data on, I believe there are zip cars in the Century on Netherland Avenue, which is a block away from the Arlington Avenue spot. Who is it, Tori, do you have data on how many times those cars are used or whether they're overbooked? So that would be something that would be really helpful. I also just want to address the privatization issue. The public pays the taxes that make those streets and make those parking spaces. So having a for-profit organization take over a public resource is not something. I'm not for it in public parks. I'm certainly not for it on public streets. Residents do pay those taxes. So I think that they should have the ability to park on the streets. I do not have a dog in this fight. I do not drive. I do not own a car. But this is just seems to be another one of those ideas that sounds good, but doesn't have any real data behind it for us to make informed and thoughtful decisions about it. And sometimes feels like bureaucratic box checking where, oh, we did the presentation and we're going ahead to do it anyway. So I hope that what Deb said was that, you know, we should listen and be open. I hope that Zipcar and Get Around and DOT offer us the same opportunity to listen to us and be open to what the community is saying is a scarce resource here as it is.
Thank you, Ms. Cologne.
Those
Thank
were
you,
my
Cologne.
things. Thank you.
You're welcome. Fred Klein from Assemblyman Denowitz's office.
Yeah, theory is interesting that car share takes off cars from the road. Saw the data, would be interested in more of that. I do think that what people are saying about site selection really matters. What people see on the ground often differs significantly. What from people, you know, whether you're in an office in California or in Brooklyn or wherever the offices are, it doesn't always align. I have two specific questions. One is about illegal parking in the reserved spaces. What, like if I rented a Get Around or a Zipcar and I come back and somebody's blocking my space illegally, what's the recourse there? How does that work? You know, we can hardly get ticketing agents, you know, to do alternate side ticketing, all kinds of illegal parking happening. So that question. And then number two, understanding the confines of, you said you're bound by case law and state legislative, we need to change that. Very interested in that conversation. All right, do you think that you're allowed under current rules to require car share companies to do things like
That's a
invest
car
in
share
curb cuts that
company
need to be
person right
replaced?
there.
Or, you know, I know you guys
Get
are
Around.
a contractor in the Bronx. You know, is there something around, you know, not a monetary use for the space, but in terms of sort of a horse trading, you know, if you're going to take up 2 spaces, can you come in and fix up our curbs on that block or the curb cuts on that block? You know, is that allowed under the case law and sort of the precedents that have been set previously?
So I can certainly answer that first question. So if you take out a car share car and you come back to a block space, you are to file a 311 complaint, and you're also to call that respective car share company, whether it's Zipcar or Get Around, to let them know that a space is blocked. They will tell you to find the closest legal parking spot, or if they happen to have an operations team member within the area, that team member can come and take that car. I should say we work very closely with NYPD and the TEA agents for outreach and education on proper ticketing of illegal parked cars in these spaces. And if there are problem sites that are consistently blocked by illegal parking or placards, that comes to me and I will escalate it up to our liaison in PD. We certainly had, in the first few months of the pilot, that first year, we saw block spaces were a huge problem, and we allowed the car share companies to mark the streets in November of 2019. And when we allowed the car share companies to do that, it dramatically reduced block spaces. I believe about by like 70%, it reduced block spaces. So we're hoping that visibility on the street will also deter people from parking there. To your second question, I don't know that answer. I would have to ask. I would have to take that back to the office and ask.
Yeah, if
I'm
you
honestly
could.
not
I
quite
know-
sure
I-
about
it's-
that.
I mean, maybe Keith knows now. The last time I checked, the Bronx didn't have a curb construct at all. You know, which is a huge problem considering the curbs are the responsibility of DOT. So I thought maybe this would be a convenient solution to get around the case law limits while still, you know, benefiting the community in more than was it $236 a space.
And I also want to say, I can provide better language on the case law to Keith to share with everyone. Unfortunately, it's a larger conversation and a larger process than just
legislative
DOT.
director-
Yeah,
Our legislative director
and
would love to look at it.
yeah, exactly. Right. It's going to take everyone getting involved in New York City as well as state legislative to get it changed. But we
Please send that
understand.
to the land use committee. We will examine it carefully. I
Of
should
course,
tell you, as a member of the Board of Collective Bargaining of the City of New York, those DEA agents, or whatever they're called, do not, under their contract, have an obligation to observe violations in private space. And so they can and should refuse to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Murner. Susan P., followed by Camelia Tepelis. Please unmute yourself, Ms. Poliachi.
Oh, you said it very well. Thank you. My concern is I share many of the concerns that have been raised here. Privatization, and I'm very grateful to the committee members for bringing so many of these things up and about the data, all the data things, which I don't know much about data. I did want to point to something that has always bothered me when I used to live, before I lived in Riverdale, I lived on the Upper West Side, and the Tavern on the Green is a prime example in Central Park of somehow some private person getting a hold of part of Central Park. And ever since then, it's been a private enterprise and it doesn't really belong there. And all of that Tavern on the Green space could be public park space. And I just don't want to see that a permanent kind of thing happening in Riverdale to public property. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Tepelis. You lowered your hand. Do you would you still like to speak? Okay. I don't see her on the call. Holly, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, that's what I was doing. Thanks. Sorry it took so long. I just want to comment. I'm a person who parks on the street, and my life, my daily, every single day life is affected by the parking or lack of it. So this is a very sensitive issue for me. And it makes life very difficult. It makes me think about moving from New York City altogether. So I think that this needs to be talked about a lot. I did want to counter one thing that was said by Ms. Deborah Travis when she mentioned that by using the space for a rideshare type of situation, that it would open that spot for several different people versus one person who could, a private person parking in the spot. But that's not good math. The math is that, again, and a statistic that hasn't been mentioned, how many people on a particular block would access use of the rideshare versus how many people live on the block that come home every day from work and have to fight for the spot. It's not one private person that's getting that spot. There are hundreds of people on this block that are in competition with each other and literally have to turn their lives upside down, figure out what time are they going to leave work, what time are they going to leave for work, what time they're going to come home. I play games with my neighbor. If you wait for me, I'll be there in 10 minutes and I can take the spot you're leaving. I mean, there's a few hundred people that live in the buildings around me. And so the competition is amongst a few hundred people, or now you're reducing it to the 10 people, you know, within a couple of blocks that might use that one spot. That doesn't make good sense to me. That's my comment. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Ryan G.
So,
followed by-
wait, Kelly, since I was spoken to, I just wanted to respond and I can respond quickly. Just the math really is just that those 100 people, and I totally understand what you mean because we have the same problem near me, but that hopefully 5 of them, 10 of them join Zipcar instead or join GetAround instead, and then you're not competing with them. That's the whole premise, is that some of those people probably are as frustrated as you are and thinking about leaving the city too because they can't find parking, and that they will ditch their cars because there's a car parked nearby. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan G., followed by Camelia Tepelis. Again, I'm going to ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, hey everyone. I'll be brief, but appreciate you letting me speak. I totally appreciate the vision of these companies. I understand this is both an equity issue and an environmental issue. I'm supportive of everything Deborah said. I hope it's all true. I'm rooting for you guys for it to be true. But the one thing I can't get past is, at one point in time, Zipcar was valued at $1.2 billion. They were eventually acquired by Avis for $500 million. I think they can pay, or let's say invest, a little bit more into the community than what is on offer tonight. So it's my only comment. I just want what's best for the community on this. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Tepelis.
Yes, thank you. I just want to back what Deborah said as far as this issue being an issue of equity. We have large portions of our district that are people living below poverty line, minorities that clearly cannot afford cars. From the point of view of affordable housing, with the number of new buildings going up in our district, I cannot imagine the mayhem that would be if every single person that gets a new apartment in CB8 would have their own personal cars. I hear what everybody says as far as usage of private space. I strongly agree with Rosemary in terms of the potential for private parkings having been sufficiently explored by the Zipcar and the other companies. But again, this program is here because of its success. They are expanding here because they feel that there is an additional needs to be fulfilled. And these are the needs of our local residents of occasionally using a car instead of buying an individual car that may or may not afford, getting into debt in order to be able to afford to take the kids once every month somewhere upstate or so, occasional use. I also want to give a shout out to DOT. I know that they are under heavy pressure to continuously develop sort of more sustainable models of transportation. And I do believe this project, this extension of this project is a part of it. But I do believe that the milestone that they gave, meaning once a year reviewing the locations and the usage, I think that's too long. I think that the location should be reviewed much more often and basically be moved to sites that are proven that there is a strong demand. If any of these sites is not sufficiently used, that's indeed a sort of abusive use of public space or improper use. Yes, I'm concluding, yes. So I would ask DOT to review more than once a year usage and get back to us. Thank you so much, Chair Beaufort.
Thank you, everyone. We have everyone's comments. We appreciate everyone's time this evening. To the committee members, I know Dan Paternak, you had additional questions. You're muted, Dan.
I apologize. Chair Buford, my concern is it merit-based right now? It's procedure. And, you know, both yourself and Chair Spalter asked for a 90-day comment period, and DOT basically said they don't know that they can give it to us. So based upon our own process, you know, our hands are kind of tied in a sense. We're forced to make a comment, if any comment, even based upon procedure tonight, just to get something in. And it's not the place where we want to be. But, you know, I would move forward a resolution, you know, based on procedure only, you know, essentially stating that, you know, the committee rejects the proposal based upon the fact, and I've just started jotting comments based upon the fact that we only have 30 days to give any comment. And it's not just us, you know, we as a committee will go to the board, and then the board will have to give comment. And the truth is, this is the first time that we're looking at it. And I would love to have more of a merit-based conversation. I would love to see some of the data. I would love to go through the locations. You know, we were first given 9 and now we're down to 4, which makes it a little easier, but I'd still like to take a trip out to those locations and review it. And it's just, for me, it's difficult to have this unknown right now. So my resolution that I would present, and I'm certainly willing to discuss it, and it's not merit-based on this program at all, but it's just procedure. And I'm hoping still, you know, before this, that DOT comes back and says, yes, you know, we'll give you more time for comment. But my resolution is going to be whereas DOT first presented its permanent car share program on 11/17/22, whereas DOT stated that it would give CB8 30 days for comment on the permanent car share program, whereas TNT Chair Buford and CB8 Chair Spalter asked that DOT give the CB 90 days for comment on the permanent car share program, whereas DOT stated that it would get back to the community board on whether they will permit comments beyond the 30-day period. Whereas CB8 wishes to have a meaningful, merit-based discussion on the proposed permanent car share program with an opportunity to investigate the locations, inform the public, and elicit testimony from the community district. Therefore, be it resolved that CB8 rejects the permanent car share locations in CB8 based only upon a failure of DOT to give the CB 90 days to review the proposal, especially given the fact that the presentation was not given to CB8 to review prior to the 11/17/22 meeting. This is not a resolution I want to put forward, but again, I think right now our hands are tied, and you know, I asked DOT one more time, will you please give us more time than that 30 days? Will you commit to more time than that?
And as I said, we will take it into consideration and get back to the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Cobb. Then Madam Chair Buford, I would like to put my motion forward. And I ask any other member to please second it.
I would second it, Dan. Could we just insert the term, an interesting but very complicated proposal?
Sure, I could put that just a whereas this is a.
Yeah, basically. I mean, because it is interesting, but it's very complicated, and therefore we need 90 days.
I'm putting in a whereas that says, whereas this is an interesting yet complicated proposal.
That works for me. If anybody wants to modify that, that's fine.
Right, because every time they put something out and we disagree to it, it goes up anyway, so we got to protect our community.
Okay. Thank you.
And again,
Dan.
we could basically, when it comes to the full board meeting, if we do get a positive response from DOT beforehand, essentially pull it, which is what we're all hoping. And I don't know if this is good or bad to do. And, you know, and again, I just wish DOT would give us a little bit more time.
Thank you. A motion has been properly made and seconded to the members of the committee. Does anyone oppose the motion as it has been presented? Does anyone wish to abstain?
I'm ineligible to vote.
Thank you. The record will reflect that Deb Travis is ineligible to vote due to a conflict of being a Zipcar associate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Having one abstention, that's one abstention, and 6 for, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Moving on then, is there any old business to come before the committee? Is there any new business to come before the committee? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
A second.
Thank you. Does anyone oppose ending the meeting?
Well, it's
Okay.
been fun. I don't know.
Thank you all. Have a great one.
Bring
And
'em
have a
up.
happy and safe Thanksgiving, everyone.
Have a good
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Bye, happy
Thank you,
Thanksgiving.
Cesar. Have a good
Bye, all.
Thanksgiving,
Thank you
everyone.
for
Happy
your
holiday.
time.
Night, everybody.
Thank you,
And for our
everybody.
visitors.